Today, we're going to be doing a positional tier list over the starting pitchers, and we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. As you can see, the tiers are listed here. Best on every difficulty, legend only, B, C, and D tiers. Basically, kind of just to sum up what they mean, best on every difficulty, you can throw them on any difficulty and be fine, and they're the best at what they do. Legend only, these guys are good mostly on legend only, just because of their pitch speeds. B tier is kind of like a tier below the best of every difficulty. C and D, they obviously are steps below that. So we're going to go ahead and get right into this video here with this. Adam Wainwright, we're going to put him on legend only. I think he's only good on legend, and the reason why I think he's good on legend is because he can locate pitches really well. He does have a good pitch mix, good hits per nine, good enough hits per nine, let's say. And honestly, his motion's not the best in the world, but it's not the worst either. He does have the sweeping curve, which, you know, you can like it or you can hate it. I personally am not a huge fan of the sweeping curves, but, you know, if you can get your opponent to go out in front of that, that's fine by me. That's kind of why I think he's only a legend pitcher. That's just my opinion. His pitching clutch is 117. I did have to pull up the card real quick. He does have a sinker, cutter, four-seam, circle change, along with that sweeping curve. So he does have a pretty good pitch mix. So I would put Adam Wainwright in the legend-only tier. Outlier, I'm going to put him in the C tier. I think he's a lefty who has a sinker, has decent pitch mix. His hits per nine is high for what he is. I just don't think he's a very usable card. If you want to use a left-handed pitcher, be my guest. But right now, the meta is so righty-heavy that I just don't think he's that good. His hits per nine is only 84. He's got a sinker, cutter, curveball, slider, four-seam. He's missing that changeup. He's got some stuff missing there. Obviously, his motion's pretty good. You do like to spam the slider, cutter, sinker with him, so he does have some meta pitches there, but like I said, his hits per nine is not the greatest. Pitching clutch is only an 86. I just don't think he's very good. He's average at best. Moving on to Bob Feller, I think this card is a B tier card. He's got Outlier, so that is good for the lower difficulties. I just don't think he has the control that you would necessarily are looking for in a starting pitcher. He does have a sinker this year, which is really nice to see. I just personally am not using Bob Feller because his windup is not the best either. He has 106 hits per nine. His 125 pitching clutch is great, but he has 82 control, and on his pitches, to be quite honest with you guys, they are not the greatest in control at all. They're in the sinker's a 72. I'm looking at it right now. Changeup 67, sliders 88. So his pars are going to be relatively big. He does have four-seam, 12-6 slider, changeup, sinker, as I said. So he doesn't have the cutter, but he has the good slider. He has the good fastball that has Outlier. He has a sinker that you can vary speeds with. So he is a good player nonetheless. He does have decent quirks. I just personally think there's better options than Bob Feller. Moving on to my personal best starter in the game, Mr. Bob Gibson. I love Bob Gibson. His pitch mix is great. The only thing you could really make an argument against is his not having a cutter, which is fine to me. He has an outlier fastball, a hard slider at 90, sinker that's good, curveball which you can mix in every now and then, and a changeup that honestly, if you can locate it, it's good, but other than that, it hangs quite a bit. I will be honest, it does hang, but it is a good pitch just to throw somebody off. I like Bob Gibson a lot. He has 108 hits per nine base and 125 pitching clutch. I really like Bob. Good control, good velocity, good break on his pitches. I like Bob Gibson a lot. And he's very cheap. I mean, I think he's like $30K on the market right now. So go pick yourselves up a Bob Gibson if you haven't done yourself that justice yet. Brandon Webb, I'm gonna put him at B tier along with I'm gonna put him at B tier along with Bob Feller. I just don't think this card. It has a good pitch mix. Doesn't really throw that hard. Has a sinker, curveball, changeup, cutter, four seam. You would like to see a slider in there, obviously, with Brandon Webb. 96 hits per nine, 103. Pitching clutch, 120 stamina. Has good control, so he is going to be able to locate his pitches. His par regions aren't going to be as big. So he is good with the control factor. I just don't think his motion's that deceiving, but he does have a good pitch mix, and he does have good control. So if you're looking for that in a pitcher, go get yourselves Brandon Webb. Chris Sale, we're going to kind of move him on here to C tier. We're going to keep him above Outlier. I think he's better than Outlier. The Chris Sale that we're looking at here has four pitches. He has a slider, sinker, four seam, and changeup, I would like to say. Let me confirm that. Yes, that is what it is. So Chris Sale, lefty, his arm slot's a little funny. I think he's okay. There's every now and then where it takes a little bit for me to get used to him. 85 hits per nine, once again, very low. for a pitcher of this caliber, pitching clutch 91. So once again, even if runners are on, your PCI is going to be relatively big with Chris Sale. The biggest thing with Chris Sale, though, is his arm slot. I think he's better than Outlier just for that purpose alone. So if you're going to go with somebody like Chris Sale, that's the reason why I would. Also, you get him from the Team Affinity, so he is free. That's just a card that might be a usable 5th starter or a spot starter if you're a no money spent player or something like that. Moving on to Corbin Burnes, these guys are all going to be in the same tier. You can see I think Corbin Burnes is the best of the 3 just because of his pitch mix. His pitch mix is definitely what you want to see, and his hits per 9 is at 94, so that's something that's really nice. He does have a pitching clutch of 86, so if you get runners on, he's going to get hit pretty hard. He's got the cutter, though, the really hard cutter, curveball, circle change, slider, and sinker. You like to see that as a pitch mix. I personally just don't really think Corbin Burnes has the deception that you need. Sinker only has 61 control, so it's hard to control a sinker as it is. I just don't think Corbin Burnes is as elite. Until we get a better card of Corbin Burnes, I don't think this is a Corbin Burnes that's worth running in your rotation unless, like I said, you need a spot start or he's your 5th rotation starter as a no money spit player. Moving on to Dontrelle Willis, I'm going to put him in B tier. I think this is probably the 2nd best lefty in the game right now. I'm going to put him as the 3rd best lefty in the game right now, behind 2 other guys. I think Dontrelle has a solid pitch mix. I actually used Dontrelle in relief for a couple games. I brought him in out of the pen. He's not as bad as I thought he was going to be. 98 hits per 9. He has good control. His velocity's low, obviously. He's got the 4-seam, slider, changeup, cutter, and curveball. I personally like to work off of changeups, so that works with me with Dontrelle Willis. I like Dontrelle quite a bit for that reason. The cutter cuts in on the righties and runs away from the lefties. The 4-seam gets high enough speed. I've seen it top out at 97 to where you can jam him a little bit. He doesn't have the sinker, so that part does suck. But Dontrelle's not a terrible choice for 42,000 stubs. I think there might be better choices, obviously, or he would not be in B tier. So I'm putting him in B tier for the time being. Dustin May, he is going in the best on every difficulty. I think right now he is the 4th best starting pitcher in the game. I like Dustin May right now. His control, he gets wild at times, but honestly, his pitch mix and his windup is so glitchy that it doesn't really matter. He does have a 109 hits per 9. His pitching clutch is only 94, so when runners get on base, his PCI gets relatively big. He does have a sinker, slurve, 4-seam, cutter, and circle change. That circle change just as well not even be a pitch because you can't control it at all. And like I said, I like to work off of changeups, and I can't control his changeup at all. He does have Outlier on his sinker, so his sinker gets up to 98, 99, which is really nice to see. Like I said, he is one of the better pitchers in the game right now. I personally am not the biggest of fans of him, but he is tough to hit sometimes, and I do still use him in my rotation. Moving on to Fergie Jenkins, I'm going to put this card in D tier. Actually, I'll put it in C tier. This is just being generous. I don't think this Fergie Jenkins card is that good. He just doesn't have the pitch mix, the hits per 9. He doesn't have anything really good. His motion's not deceiving at all. I faced this card one time and absolutely destroyed it. I do not like Fergie Jenkins at all. 88 hits per 9. He does have good control at least, and he has good pitching clutch. So when there are runners on, that's fine. He has a 4-seam, slider, sinker, curveball, and the forkball as his last pitch. He doesn't have Outlier or anything of that nature. Quirks are okay. I'm just not a huge fan of Fergie Jenkins. I think you can do better, especially for his price at 40K. I think Dontrelle Willis is a much better starter than Fergie. That's just my opinion, though. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. Valenzuela, I think he can go in B tier, depending on who it is. Some people struggle to hit the screwball, some people don't. It's one of those guys that you either really struggle or you really don't at all. So there's no in between with him, so kind of put him in the middle here. I don't know that he's a legend-only pitcher necessarily, but that's a guy that I would trust at least for a spot start. I have used him a few times and had some success, but I do know that against good players, he's going to struggle badly, and on the lower difficulties, he is also going to struggle. So actually, I might put this guy in legend only, because that's the only time I would probably use Valenzuela, is legend only. So we're going to put him in legend only. That doesn't mean he's necessarily ahead of Bob Feller, Dontrelle Willis, and those guys. I just think that he's a legend-only pitcher, and that's the only time you should use him because of his pitch repertoire. He's got the screwball, the four-seam, the curveball, and the circle change. I think just he relies so much on breaks, so it's very hit or miss on whether he's actually going to be a good pitcher or not. So that's my opinion on Fernando Valenzuela. Grayson Rodriguez, I'm going to put him in legend only as well. And the reason why is because he doesn't have a sinker. Well, actually I'm going to put him above Bob Feller. I think he's better than Bob Feller. So we're going to put him there at B tier, actually. Grayson Rodriguez, for me, I pitched one game with him. I didn't really give him much of a chance after that first game. He went 7 or 8 innings and gave up like 4 or 5 runs, which on legend isn't bad. He has 102 hits per 9, 105 pitching clutch, not bad. He's got the 4-seam slider, curveball, circle change, and cutter. Once again, he does have outlier, so he is able to ramp his fastball up to 103, which is nice to see. It is nice to have that ability. He's just not very good at getting swings and misses, and I had troubles locating his slider, which, you know, I think his control's not the greatest in the world, at 84 looking at it now, and it's not the greatest in the world, so that part he has a lot of troubles with. So if you're not one of those guys who can locate and use the pinpoint very well, then I probably would not advise you to get Grayson Rodriguez. He is okay, though. His windup's pretty good for the most part. I'm just not a huge fan of Grayson past this point at B tier. Hunter Brown, I'm going to put him at the bottom of B tier, and the only reason he's there is because he has an outlier fastball, and on top of that, he has a somewhat glitchy motion. I don't think he's better than any of these guys in B tier, to be quite honest, but I don't think he's as bad. I think he could go to the top of C tier. We're going to go to the top of C tier with him. 101 hits per 9, which is solid. Pitching clutch 106, which is solid. He's got the 4-seam, knuckle curve, slider, and splitter, and as I've said multiple times, I like to work off of changeups. He doesn't have a changeup, so that part hurts him. He has an outlier fastball, which is really nice, but his motion is a little deceiving, so that's why I have Hunter Brown there. I think he could be decent with his outlier fastball if your opponent can't catch up to fastballs, but he would be a 5th starter at best for me. Jacob deGrom, same thing, same exact thing as Hunter Brown. I think the live series deGrom is one of those cards that you literally have to be spot on with. He has a 4-seam, a hard slider, circle change, curveball, 2-seam. I'm not a big fan of him not having a sinker or anything. He does have outlier, which is really nice. He has decent enough quirks also to help him out. I just think at this point a lot of people have seen deGrom and he's not as deceiving as he used to be, but at the same time that hard 92 mile an hour slider is something that you really just, it's hard to hit in this game, especially righty with it running away from you. The PCI gets smaller for those that didn't know on the low and away and the away pitches in general. It gets smaller with the slider for some reason right now. I don't know if it's a bug or what it is, but deGrom's slider is genuinely not as great as it used to be, nor is deGrom as good as he used to be quite honest with you guys. So deGrom, I'm going to put him at C tier right here with Hunter Brown. Jesus Luzardo, I'm going to put him at C tier as well. Another lefty that, you know, kind of average at best. He does have a sinker. He does have a fastball. I believe he also has a slider and a circle change. I want to say he has a 12-6, 4-seam, sinker, and a circle change. Okay, so he has 99 hits per 9, which is fine. 103 pitching clutch. I haven't really faced this card. I have used him, though. He does locate at an okay rate. It's not the greatest, but at the same time, his main pitch is his 12-6, and that's not a good main pitch to have in this game. So Luzardo, I'm kind of putting him down low because of that reasoning, and that's where I'm at with him. John Donaldson. We're going to put him in legend only. I'm going to give him some respect here for just a moment. If you have all of the series done with the Negro League and that kind of thing, get yourselves a John Donaldson and actually use the boost. The boost makes John Donaldson a pretty good legend pitcher, to be quite honest with you guys. And I think if you don't have the boost, he's a D-tier pitcher. I don't think he's good at all. But if you have that boost on him, I think he's one of those guys that you have to be able to play. And personally, I don't have the things done for this. So he does get plus 25, so he does get 110 hits or 100 hits per 9. His pitching clutch is only a 70, but I believe that gets boosted as well. So John Donaldson's one of those guys. He has a slider, 4-seam, slurve, forkball, and sinker. You like to see that. He doesn't have outlier, but he does have a glitchy left-handed windup. So that's something with John Donaldson you like to see out of him. And he's definitely one of those guys who could definitely be a 4th or 5th guy for you if you need a spot start. But he's got to have those boosts, so you got to play Buck O'Neil and you got to play some other hitter along with him. Moving on to Johnny Cueto. I think this card is a B-tier card. I'm going to put him probably right here with Brandon Webb. I usually hit Johnny Cueto pretty solid for the most part. He's slower. He's got decent enough control, which you would think, you know, with his control being an 80 that he wouldn't. But I locate pretty well with this pitch. I think it has something to do with the amount of velocity that he has. He does have a sinker, circle change, cutter, four seam, and slider. So he does have the pitch mix you like to see. It's just slow. He doesn't really have any quirks either. 100 hits per 9, as I said. Pitching clutch 107. Not bad. Honestly, Johnny Cueto's motion's not bad either. He's overall a pretty decent option for 10K. So if you don't have Johnny Cueto and you're kind of struggling on stubs a little bit, Johnny Cueto's a good option for you. Moving on to Madison Bumgarner. I think he is a top 3 arm in the game right now. I like him better than Dustin May, especially on Legend. Lower than Legend, it's a little bit tougher, but on Legend, I definitely like Madison Bumgarner. I've had great success with him. I struggle to hit him. He has 104 hits per 9. 94 pitching clutch, which you'd like to see a little higher. He's got the four seam, the cutter, the sweeping curve, the circle change, and the sinker. Now, you can work his cutter and circle change and sinker. That's the 3 main pitches that I use. I throw in a four seam every now and again and a sweeping curve just to throw my opponent off. But he controls the pitches really well. It's got good break, especially his cutter. His cutter's got really good break. I really like Madison Bumgarner, and his arm slot's a little deceiving. I think he's one of the better windups in the game, and he's probably the best lefty in the game that we have right now, starting pitching-wise. So Madison Bumgarner, if you don't have him yet, he is very, very, very cheap. So I would advise you guys maybe to go pick him up. He is one of those cards that would definitely be advisable to go pick up. So go pick him up. Marcus Stroman, I'm going to put him at the end of B tier. He doesn't really have a great pitch mix. It's okay at best. Well, let me rephrase that. He has a good pitch mix, but his stats are not very good. He has 93 hits per 9, 86 pitching clutch, which is not very good. He's got the sinker, slider, splitter, cutter, and four seam. He doesn't have the changeup, but you can use the splitter as a changeup, which is what I like to do. I personally have hit this card pretty hard. He is a slow velo card. He's one of those cards that you could probably get away with on Legend if you absolutely had to. Other than that, though, nothing too special about Marcus Stroman. Doesn't have any quirks or anything like that. Nothing too special about him. I probably wouldn't use Marcus Stroman if I had, unless I had to. Max Scherzer. This might surprise you guys a little bit. I'm putting him in D tier. This is the first D tier card. This card is absolutely abysmally bad for what he was supposed to be. I'm pretty upset that they did him this way, but they did. So we're going to talk about it here. He's got 95 hits per 9. He's got a 102 pitching clutch, which those stats are not bad at all. He has no quirks at all. He has a four-seamer, a slider, a circle change, a slurve, and a cutter. I think I could do well with this card on Legend, and that's about it. But at the same time, he has no quirks. He can control well. He does have the cutter and the slurve and the slider, which you like to see. He has no sinker, and he has no four-seam that ramps up to 100. That's a big problem with Max Scherzer. That's a big problem. And his windup takes forever. So I don't like windups that take forever. Is a little bit lower than what I should probably put him, but for that reason, I don't really like him, especially for his price point as well. It's 65,000 stubs. I'm not buying Max Scherzer at all. There's so many better options than Max Scherzer. Don't buy Max Scherzer. Nick Lodolo. I'm going to put him at the end of C tier. He is pretty much the same thing as Luzardo and Sale and Leiter, and they're all about the same guy for the most part. Lodolo has a little bit better of an arm slot than these guys. I don't think it's as glitchy as I thought it was going to be. He's got the four seam, the slurve, the sinker, and the circle change. His control is mid at best, 92 hits per 9, 96 pitching clutch. Lefty, obviously. His windup's okay. I have used him in a couple friendlies. He didn't do so well in the friendlies, so that's kind of where I'm at with Nick Lodolo. I don't think he's a very viable player, but you can try him if you want, if you like Nick Lodolo. Pablo Lopez, putting him on Legend only. I think Pablo Lopez is one of those cards that's really good on Legend. I've actually been diced by him a couple times, but at the same time, he's not super deceiving either. Control is very good. Break is very good. Hits per 9 is a little lower than you'd like to see at 93. Pitching clutch is only an 88. But he does have a good pitch mix with the 4-seam, circle change, cutter, sinker, and slurve. You do like to see that. He does have the sinker, the slurve, the cutter that you can work with. So I do like that about him. I do like his control. The break on everything is really good. So he's one of those finesse kind of arms that you really like to see on Legend. And personally, I think he's solid. I think you can get away with him on Hall of Fame as well. I think he's a solid arm. I think he's better than half those guys in B tier. The only person I might put ahead of him is Grayson, but it kind of depends on what you want in that tier. So I'm going to put him there for now. Paul Blackburn, he's going to go in C tier along with these guys. I think he's going to go at the top. And the reason why is because of his pitching motion. It is a little wonky. He only has 85 hits per 9, but he does have a good pitch mix with the sinker, cutter, circle change, 4-seam, and 12-6 combo. You wish to see a slider, but obviously we don't. 82 pitching clutch, not very good. Quirks, he doesn't really have anything. So Paul Blackburn's nothing too special, nothing out of the ordinary. Pedro Martinez, we are going to put him right here at the top of B for now, for the time being. I don't think this card's that special. There's nothing special about him at all with his pitch mix in the least bit, which you guys might be looking at me kind of crazy right now. That's okay. If you guys ever faced this card before in prior years, he's been nothing special, and I don't think he's going to be anything special this year. 106 hits per 9, 109 pitching clutch. He is a shorter pitcher. He has an outlier fastball, circle change, slider, curveball, and a cutter. I really wish his cutter was a little bit better, but the control on everything, he's a control pitcher. He does have good break on everything, so maybe he's better than what we think. I haven't faced him yet. I'm putting him at B tier just because I don't think anybody is using this card right now. And I also don't think this is anybody's first or second choice in that set pack. So I think this is everybody's last choice on who they're going to be getting. I just don't think Pedro's that great. We have a lot of good righties as it is. We needed a good lefty here, and we just don't have it. So Pedro Martinez, I'm putting him in B tier. Roki Sasaki, I'm going to put him as the second best pitcher in the game right now. Actually, I'm putting him as the third best pitcher in the game, and Bumgarner's going to 4, Dustin's going to 5. That's where my rankings are right now. So, anyways, continuing on. Roki Sasaki, you can make a case for him to be number 1, and I would not be mad at it at all. I genuinely would not be mad with the top 3 being different than everybody else. Roki, to me, has the good pitch mix, but the problem with Roki, for me, is he doesn't have a good changeup to work off of at all. He doesn't even have a changeup. And everything that he throws is above 90, except his slider, and even his slider hits 90 sometimes. But his hits per 9 and his pitching clutch, 113 hits per 9, 116 pitching clutch. I am looking at a parallel 4 version of him, so he does have the outlier sinker and the outlier fastball, which is really nice to see. He has the cutter, the forkball that's at 92, sometimes it's 94 miles an hour, and the slider, who has good cutting action, has good break. Locating it's a little bit hard. I do struggle to locate it, and that's probably the pitch that people hit the most for me, but that is just my opinion. I don't really like to use his slider much because it hangs quite a bit. The rest of his pitches, though, are really solid, and he's been a really solid arm for me so far. He's probably been my second best arm performance-wise, so that's kind of where I'm at with that. With Roki, I think you need to go get yourselves a Roki if you can afford it. If not, there's some other options here that I have suggested that you guys should be able to get. Moving on to Rube Foster, I'm putting him at C tier. Even with the boost, I don't think he's all that great. Satchel Paige, I'm going to put him at B tier because I think he's better than Rube Foster. I don't think he's as good as John Donaldson. That's where we're at with that. Ohtani, I think he is the second best pitcher in the game. The starting pitcher, Shohei Ohtani, that is. His slider's good. His fastball, outlier's good. Splitter, great. Cutter, great. Curveball, you can give him the good old Cooperstown, and they won't hit it. I like him a lot. He's been my best performing pitcher so far outside of Bob Gibson and Bumgarner. I like him a lot, and I feel like I can pitch the best with him because I can pitch off of his splitter and actually locate his splitter as a changeup. I can locate his slider well. His fastball's good to ramp things up. I really like Shohei Ohtani quite a bit. Tom Seaver, I've seen the light of day. I'm going to put him at D tier. Not the best. Don't use him. I'm not even going to go into detail with him. Vida Blue, we're going to put him in B tier. I think he is just as good as good old Pedro. He unfortunately does not have Outlier on his fastball, which we definitely wanted to see out of him from the BR rewards, but unfortunately we didn't get that. However, we did get 111 hits per 9 and 99 pitching clutch. He does have a 4-seam, a curveball, a changeup, a slider, and a 2-seam. As I've said, we would like to see a cutter or a sinker, either one added in there instead of the 2-seam, which we didn't get, unfortunately. He has decent enough quirks. I just don't think he's that great, personally, and he's not worth the stubs for sure. So if you guys get the 12-0 flawless pack, make sure you guys go get Griffey or Posada. Those guys are more worth it than the Vida Blue. Obviously, he probably is the best statistical lefty in the game, but I think Bumgarner's better, and I think John Donaldson with the boost is better. Walter Johnson, I'm going to put him in D tier for his pricing. Absolutely horrific pricing. Do not go get Walter Johnson. Not worth it in the least bit. $66K for a card that has a 4-seam, a sinker, a curveball, and a changeup. Doesn't even have a slider, doesn't have a cutter, doesn't have anything that moves horizontally at all. Do not go get yourselves Walter Johnson. I'm not going to go into details with that. Do not go get him. Yamamoto, I'm going to put him in C tier. Actually, we're going to put him in D tier. He's at the top of D tier for me. He's not great. He has decent enough pitches. It's not that fast enough to really do any deceiving. I don't like Yamamoto much, so I would not go get him if I were you. Darvish, I'm going to put him in Legend only. Actually, we're going to put him here as the 6th guy. I wanted to keep it to 5, but I think the 6th guy right there is necessary because I think you can make a preference-based decision on Dustin May or Darvish. I personally would probably pick Darvish over Dustin May. I'm not really sure. I mean, it changes every day on who I would choose. So that's kind of where I'm at with you. You has 106 hits per 9, 100 pitching clutch. There's also a parallel 2 version of him, so keep that in mind. Has really good control. Probably the best control pitcher in the game. Has a good cutter, has a good sinker, has a good slider, splitter, 4-seam. I really wish he had a changeup, but he doesn't. Has decent break on the slider and cutter. Great, they break well. 4-seam is fine. The sinker's fine. They're fast enough to get by. I like Darvish quite a bit in that spot. I think he's good enough on all difficulties to go ahead and give yourselves a try. And he's not as expensive as a guy like Roki. So he's only like 65K. So not bad for Darvish. So if you guys enjoyed the video, like I said, please make sure you guys like and subscribe. And until next time, I'm out. Peace.